President Trump calling the remarks a disgrace. California has recorded its first coronavirus death in a patient who just left a cruise ship in San Francisco. Now, on the next cruise, there are about 24 passengers and crew members on that same vessel showing potential coronavirus symptoms.
We are going to be flying testing kits to the cruise ship, and we are going to be sending those quickly back to the state.
Governor Gavin Newsom has ordered that ship remain offshore until tests are completed. He's ordered a statewide health emergency. Attempts to control the virus in China may be working, where health officials say there were only 139 new cases over the last 24 hours, and the rate of infection there appears to be declining sharply. The government in China is telling local officials to reopen factories that had been idled by the outbreak. Manufacturers buying thousands of face masks and jugs of disinfectant. Asian stocks up sharply on the news. Dow Wednesday gained 1,173 points. America is listening to Fox News.
Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon is now introducing an at-table all-you-can-eat breakfast menu from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. every Saturday and 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. every Sunday. Enjoy some quality time with your friends and family with some of your favorite local cuisine, from their waffle, hotcakes, and French toast station to their eggs and omelet station and a variety of scrumptious desserts. Weekends at Mescla Bistro in the Grand Plaza Hotel just got hotter. New year, new menu. Call 969-2652 for reservations. Some restrictions apply.
Yikes, are those Christmas bills coming in already? Those high-interest credit cards at 16, 18, even 24%? Well, we have a New Year's solution for you. A Bank Pacific personal loan with rates as low as 4.65% to pay off those expensive credit cards. It's easy, it's fast, and it's as low as 4.65% APR.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal credit opportunity lender as low as 4.65%. Conditions apply.
Senator Elizabeth Warren reportedly in talks with Bernie Sanders about a possible endorsement. Both of them unhappy with Super Tuesday.
A fiery Bernie Sanders blamed everyone and everything but his agenda for Tuesday's thumping.
It's not been a campaign, I think, that has been having to deal with the kind of venom we're seeing from some in the corporate media.
And released an ad tying him to President Obama.
That's where I feel the burn.
Biden now leads the delegate count, and the campaign shifts to primaries in Florida, Michigan, Missouri, and Pennsylvania, all states whose demographics favor Biden. Polling averages are hard because all recent surveys included Buttigieg, Klobuchar, and Bloomberg, who have since dropped out and endorsed Biden.
Fox's Leland Vittert. Sanders had been hoping for a big night Tuesday, but he only won 4 of the Tuesday primaries. Senator Sanders now says there is enormous pressure on former President Obama to endorse Biden as well. President Trump weighing in on Tuesday's primaries.
The president acknowledging that Tuesday's results have put former Vice President Joe Biden in the position as frontrunner for the Democratic presidential nomination.
It was a great comeback for Joe Biden. Incredible comeback when you think about it.
The president also saying that Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren was selfish for not dropping out before Super Tuesday, claiming that she cost Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders victories in Texas, Minnesota, and Massachusetts. The president said Joe Biden will not benefit from the endorsement he received on Wednesday from the former 3-term mayor of New York City, Mike Bloomberg, who dropped out of the race after a poor showing on Super Tuesday. At the White House, John Decker, Fox News.
Federal appeals court changing its order. The Trump administration policy that makes asylum seekers stay in Mexico. Ninth Circuit judges now saying that policy will stop next week in California and Arizona. The Trump administration still appealing. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
At the mall, as you enjoy your shopping, dining, or entertainment, you could also win 3 great cars from Atkins Kroll and thousands of prizes in Micronesia Mall's Cars, Prizes, and Getaways game. Present your mall receipts and have a chance to win the renowned performance Chevrolet Camaro, the unapologetic rugged Toyota 4Runner, or the head-turning Lexus ES350 Luxury. Getaways to Manila, courtesy of Philippine Airlines, plus prizes from Foot Locker and Burger King. The more you shop, the more chance to win in Micronesia Mall's Cars, Prizes, and Getaways game.
Cocoa Coffee Company mugs are now here. Show pride for your island as you enjoy your delicious Circle K coffee. Each generously sized 16-ounce mug is etched with Guam-inspired images like Chief Gadao, Serena, 2 lovers, and many more. The Cocoa Coffee Company Mug Collection is available for a limited time only, so don't miss out. Get yours today and collect them all. Exclusively available at Circle K locations. A portion of the proceeds go toward the Cocoa Bird Recovery Program.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Very important set of words there. I start the program with a respectful reading of the Second Amendment every day. It's where we live, so to speak, ideologically. Tall Tales is a constitutionally oriented, libertarian, conservative approach to what's going on our beautiful island of Guam, what's going on in the mainland, what's going on all over the world. I'm working on setting up a stringer on the moon, just in case we need it. I haven't put that in place yet, but, well, you know, the name of the program is, after all, Tall Tales. So we start out with the Second Amendment. We go from there to Zemi Ikotni. That's my backwards as we're bilingual play on words that translates to Meet the Press. During this portion of the program, I look at the offerings of our two daily newspapers on what they label editorial pages. And the purpose of Meet the Press is to examine each of the editorials, do some critical reading and some criticism, and determining which of the two is the better. And if one is superior to the other, the superior would be awarded the coveted Blue Star, which I would inscribe on a copy of the editorial page that I have with me in front of me and add it to the count. Ordinarily, it's not much of a decision to determine which of the two is better. It's kind of like when the score, you know, in the baseball, when the score at the basketball team is 47-0, and somebody says, which team was better? It's not too hard to figure out because the Daily News almost never plays the game. They have a part of the paper that they call opinion, where you would expect to find editorials dealing with the local scene. Your expectations would not be met because the Daily News doesn't do that except on rare occasions. Instead, they run boilerplate from USA Today, Gannett News Service, etc., and the offerings are stereotypical. They almost always bash President Donald Trump. Today's a little different because the title of the editorial is Rate Cut Leaves Little Room to Fight Recession. So at least they're picking on the Federal Reserve instead of Donald Trump, which is their usual bent. But they're not going to get a blue star for running something that they copied from some other newspaper. I turn now to the Post, and the editorial in the Post is titled, Governor's Proposal to Hold Parents More Accountable Needs to Move Forward. Everybody on the island knows about the fight at the bus stop. Well, I don't think we could call it a fight. We could call it a beating that occurred at the bus stop last Friday, where three kids kicked and punched and beat up a third young man on the ground, while some of the other kids stood around and perhaps cheered. One of them did a video. No one thought to step in and stop the violence, unfortunately. This, of course, made the news, and it produced an outcry. We've got to hold parents more accountable when their kids act like this. And this is what this editorial addresses. Here's how it goes. We hope the young man who was beat at a bus stop fight on Friday recovers quickly and without complications. Many parents watched a recently circulated video in horror as 3 boys were shown beating and kicking a 4th teen even after he falls to the ground. The video then shows one of the teens reach into his pocket, pull something out, and strike the victim, still on the ground, with the object. As adults, it's difficult to watch that level of violence committed by people that young. To know that there were others who stood by and didn't immediately call for help, or were encouraging the beating, or just recording video, is just as disheartening. While some of us probably recall seeing similar incidents in our youth, we all work hard to raise our kids in hopes that they and their peers will be better than our generation. I don't know. Being better than my generation, that would take some doing. Yeah. Let's give it a try, though. This is one of those cases where it's easier said than done. As the video was shared far and wide on social media, people were calling for someone to be held responsible. Now, you know who I'd hold responsible, real Joe Cruz?
Who would you hold responsible, sir?
The Democrats, of course.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
The left screws everything up.
It's the left, yeah. The left screws up everything it touches, yeah. As the video was shared, the fight reportedly took place after school hours at the bus stop when the students should have been on their way home after school. Bus stops are a tricky space. It hasn't always been clear what agency is in charge of them. I think I went into this yesterday, didn't I? Yeah. As a matter of fact, I did. This is yesterday's editorial. I wonder what happened to today's. Maybe I can find it here on my trusty computer. My bad. One moment. So we're hanging on here. I'm going to, I've got the wrong editorial here for the Post today. I'm going to go to the right editorial, and I'm just about there. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'd probably be better off with doing yesterday's editorial again. The title here is Protect Yourself and Others. Wash your hands. The local government is currently holding the Guam Prepares Conference, which started yesterday and continues today. It focused on bringing government agencies together with their federal counterparts. The conference comes several weeks after the global scare. The governor, who gave an opening statement for the conference, was right in saying that additional information about the virus helps. The more we get in official information, nationally, locally, internationally, the better I think we can address the situation. The potential case of COVID-19 in Palau, along with other cases popping up across the mainland U.S. where the transmission rates of the virus are unknown, are indicators that our behaviors pose the biggest defense against virus spread. Linda DeNorsi reiterated during an interview that the best thing anyone in the community can do to protect themselves from the virus is practice good hygienic etiquette and as you were self-quarantining. Have you ever self-quarantined, Real Joe Cruz?
I don't think so, sir.
Yeah. I have never self-quarantined myself. You'll recall when my cough and I came to work here for about 2 weeks. But I did practice good hygiene because I told you to make sure that you put a Kleenex over the loudspeaker on the speaker on your phone so that if I coughed into the microphone, you wouldn't catch my cough. So, you know, this is a dynamite editorial. You know, you're supposed to wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. And if you don't have soap and water, you can use alcohol-based sanitizer. You should avoid Yeah, you should avoid touching your mouth, eyes, and nose with unwashed hands. So if I wanted to touch my nose, I should go out and wash my hands first. Practice proper cough etiquette. Cover your mouth and nose with a tissue, then throw the tissue in the trash. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects or surfaces. Stay home when you are sick. Do not go to work or school. Now, this passes for an editorial. It's a news story and a public service announcement, not even close to an editorial. So I'm going to mark something on the page here, and it's not going to be a star. It's just going to be a minus. Now, I know that the governor has said that everyone should wash his hands. Excuse me. Everybody should wash their hands. And the amount of time spent washing your hands is very important. You should sing the little round, row, row, row your boat, as you wash your hands. And when you get to the end of that verse, you know that you have spent enough time washing your hands. And I've spent enough time on what the Post has put in the edits editorial page for now. Okay, so from there, we go straight to the card. Yeah. And I've got an unusual item on the card here. I've got Tall Tales versus the Rotary Club of Guam. I've got Corona versus Festback. I've got Talina versus Lou. A couple that have been here before. Governor, as you were 35th Guam legislature versus Raging Lee and Taitano. I've got Lou versus the Separatists. Pretty interesting. And I've got PMS NBC versus Tall Tales. So let me start out with Tall Tales versus the Rotary Club of Guam. I was listening to the Ray Gibson show this morning, as is my usual custom. And if you're not listening to the Ray Gibson show in the morning, you're missing a treat. It's a very good show. It starts at 6 o'clock, runs till 10. Ray Gibson, of course, is the host. The producer is the top-rated producer for talk shows here on the island, a gentleman that you're probably familiar with by the name of Real Joe Cruz. All right, that's enough. That's enough, Real Joe Cruz.
Sorry about that, sir.
Yeah, the Real Joe Cruz gets to push these buttons. Very good, Real Joe Cruz. We heard it, yeah. Okay, so as I listened this morning, I heard Ray say that I would be presenting a speech at the Rotary Club of Guam today, and he suggested to his audience that they tune in to Tall Tales to get my report on that speech. Well, you know, Real Joe Cruz, I don't like to spend a lot of time talking about myself. But like Rush Limbaugh, this time I have to because it's about me. So I will just kind of summarize my rather erudite remarks to the Rotary Club today, since I suspect that those who listen to the Ray Gibson Show would be extremely disappointed if I didn't. So I started out by informing the Rotarians that I had an important tip. Yeah, I had an important tip for all of them so that they would want to make sure they stayed around till the end of the speech to pick up on that tip. So then I talked about, you know, why would anybody want to be a senator in a part-time legislature? Sort of like, why would anybody want to be a senator if you couldn't make $55,307.20 per year doing something for which there is no accountability whatsoever? You could come and go as you please. You don't sign in for anything. You don't have to produce anything. All you have to do is remain upright and alternate feet for a whole, for a year. Maybe you don't even need to do that, and you can collect $55,307.20. And you could go on taxpayer-paid junkets. You could have a $3,000 a month office. You could have a staff of as many as 10 people. You could sort it out as manservants, maidservants, chauffeurs, footmen, whatever you need. And when you finally came to the end of your life, you'd be entitled to a state funeral with all the honors. So if you couldn't have all of those things, why would anybody want to be a senator? There'd be no reason for it. That's how I started off, and I pointed out that in a lot of cases, people don't want to be senators. What they really want to be is prince or princess. But we don't elect prince or princess here on the island. Senators is the closest you could come. I talked about who our senators are right now, and that's primarily legacy candidates and incumbents, campaigners, primarily nesters. Pointed out that some favored government of Guam employees are able to continue to draw their paychecks as they campaign for a seat in the legislature, making it somewhat difficult for one who is in the private sector to displace an incumbent or a nester. And I pointed out that the result of this system is a group of professional politicians. Tall Tales buffs would remember that I introduced a new vocabulary word probably 6 months ago, kakistocracy. And I pointed out that word. As a matter of fact, I even informed the Rotarians that they would be tested on this at the end of the speech. Kakistocracy means government by the worst persons, a form of government in which the worst persons are in power. And then, of course, I had to tell the Rotarians that what I wanted to see, even if nobody else did, I wanted to see an effective, efficient government that provides basic services in accordance with the rule of law on at least a break-even basis. That would mean no festpack, no separatist agenda, no pomp and circumstance, just basic government services. How could that happen? Well, my theory, I pointed out that my theory was that the legislature must lead, and it must lead from the moral high ground. Legislature has to clean its own house before it can start passing laws that would require the executive branch to clean up its act. And in order to do that, a part-time legislature, in my humble estimation, is the only way it can be done. I pointed out that there are only three things that are the functions of a legislature: passing laws, appropriating budgets, confirming executive appointments. Performing marriages, introducing copious numbers of resolutions, state funerals, etc., not part of the charter of the legislature. I pointed out that because the legislature gets involved, and also resolutions, of course, I pointed out that because the legislature gets so involved with these other things, and a quantity as opposed to quality approach to legislation, the law of C. Northcote Parkinson is applicable. Parkinson's law says that work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. So we spend 2 years doing about 4 months' work is what it amounts to, if that. Parkinson's law is sometimes applied to the growth of bureaucracy in an organization. So what we need is limited sessions for the legislature with small stipends so that set of citizens, good and true, who don't work for the government could come into session a couple times a year, go into panic overdrive, keep their businesses running, and also attend 60 sessions of the legislature, probably at night. And then I called attention to Jim Moylan's bill, Bill 265, which, if among other things, would reduce the cost to the legislature by 50%, taking it from over $8 million down to around $4 million, with greater savings possible once that part-time legislature is in place. Jim's bill provides that senators are not employees. It eliminates frills, provides for 2 30-day sessions with $100 per diem for those 60 days, creates a research and service bureau with a professional staff, and several other things. And I pointed out that the current crop of senators, the incumbents and the wannabes, will fight this with everything they've got, all different kinds of pretexts, etc., because my analysis is that if we went from a full-time legislature like we have now to a part-time legislature next time around, you know how many of the current senators would run for a part-time legislature? Let me see. I think I've written it down here somewhere. Where's my blank piece of paper? Yeah. I don't think any of them would. And I cautioned the people there that at the Rotary that there are some things to be careful of. Don't get sucked into the initiative trap. Don't say, well, if they won't do it, so what we've got to do is do an initiative. The initiative process is so cumbersome, one. Two, a bill as comprehensive or a scheme as comprehensive as a part-time legislature doesn't lend itself well to the initiative format. Three, talking about an initiative gives current senators cover. It allows a senator to say, I think part-time legislature would be good, but I want the people to decide. Are you going to vote for it? Well, like I said, I think the people should decide. Are you going to call for a referendum? The people could come out with an initiative. I want the people to decide. In other words, I wouldn't touch this with somebody else's 10-foot pole, but I got a really good excuse here. Okay, this is kind of analogous to our big halftime show, but we're at the Rotary now. So I'll be back in just a minute.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his Smile Team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his Smile Team.
They make smiles happen.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training every morning on The Ray Gibson Show.
Can we improve our workplace skills by bathing in the wisdom of athletes? I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, some notable things some of the best have said.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title. When you absolutely need confidentiality in your real estate transactions.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
I also talked about who ought to serve in that part-time legislature, and I pointed out to the audience there at the Rotary, it ought to be folks like you, people who are in business, who contributes to society, who could go into panic overdrive a couple times a year, and could lend your expertise and wisdom to the legislative process. I also pointed out that a lot of folks would take a very dim view of the idea that our legislature would ever enact a part-time legislature law. And at that time, I explained a term called learned helplessness. And here's what it means. Learned helplessness occurs when an animal is repeatedly subjected to an aversive stimulus that it cannot escape. Eventually, the animal will stop trying to avoid the stimulus and behave as if it is utterly helpless to change the situation. Even when opportunities to escape are presented, this learned helplessness will prevent any action. Now, fortunately, Dr. Tom Poole, who you are acquainted with, Real Joe Cruz, was kind of like my sponsor for the speech, and he concurred in my definition of learned helplessness. And then I went on to say, while the concept is strongly tied to animal psychology and behavior, it can also apply to many situations involving human beings. And this is what I mean by that. I've heard this so many times. Those guys will never change. That bill will never see the light of day. It'll never get a public hearing. It isn't going to happen. In a sense, saying to folks like me, you're stupid. You're wasting your time by even trying to do something like this. And my response was, there is something you can do. Cast aside your learned helplessness. And get, my idea is this, that it won't pass this time around because this group of senators is not going to put themselves out of their cushy jobs. But what needs to happen is this has to become a wedge issue. The idea of part-time legislature needs to become a wedge issue, just like the salary increase brought about by the great salary smash and grab of November 21st, 2014. And you'll remember that became such a prominent issue that it caused the civilianization of 7 senators, a turn the rascals out movement. That's what needs to happen with this part-time legislature idea. It needs to become a wedge issue. And I pointed out to everybody there that what they could do is when politicians come around to hit them up for campaign contributions, the question is, are you going to move on part-time legislature? And if the answer is not yes, wholeheartedly, then no campaign contributions would be available. I suggested they talk to their friends, etc., use whatever influence they had to make this issue a wedge issue. Well, that's who I would see would be moving in, and the kind of people we'd want to see in our legislature, common folk, not folks that have spent their entire lives as career politicians. I also tried to sort of a call to action, kind of saying, you folks need to do this. You need to come forward. And this is what I said. Here's something from President Ronald Reagan. It's by choice, not by imposition, that the Constitution is the supreme law of our land. While a Constitution may set forth rights and liberties, only the citizens can maintain and guarantee those freedoms. Active and informed citizenship is not just a right, it's a duty. That's what I told him, Real Joe Cruz.
Yep, sir. Well said.
Yeah, sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, kind of thing you'd say, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So then I got to the end of my speech and I said, now I'm going to give you the tip that I promised. I'm going to tell you a way to avoid embarrassment. Nobody likes to be embarrassed, so here's your way to avoid embarrassment. When someone, and I used a guy in the audience named Paul as an example, I said, Paul, when someone comes up to you and says, Paul, why isn't your company sponsoring Tall Tales? You could tell him, I'm going to call 888-7346, and I'm going to arrange that right now. 888-7346. Right, Paul? So that tip made the entire presentation worthwhile. So then, after that, as is the usual custom when you do a little talk like that, I said, in my usual super modest way, I said something like, given the clarity and depth of my presentation and its completeness, it would seem to be that there couldn't possibly be any questions. But on the odd chance that there is, I will entertain questions. And I saw this kind of veil of anger descend over the faces, and several hands went up. And I said, you have a question? And the question was, where in the hell is the real Joe Cruz? And that was the end of my speech.
Wow, really?
Well, the name of the speech was Tall Tales.
Nice, sir.
Yeah, all right. So that's what happened at the Rotary. And our Carl wasn't there, but as usual, he's on the line. Good afternoon, our Carl. And Jesse, I'll get to you in just a minute. Good afternoon, our Carl.
Hey, good afternoon, Bob. Yeah, I recently saw Real Joe Cruz at a distance in public, and he was wearing those movie star sunglasses and a smoking jacket and one of those long filter cigarettes, He was really living the part of the superstar. So.
Well, he is a celebrity.
He is. Man, yeah, I don't know if I can even approach him anymore.
Yeah, when it's time for him to leave, he has to have a lookout because he doesn't want to stumble out the door into the arms of the paparazzi.
Exactly. He's got to do that move, where he covers his head with a towel,
Yeah.
Running out to his car.
Really?
Yeah, I'd just like to comment about, your comment about the learned helplessness, If we look back in our history, there were several times when things happened that I would never have thought would be possible. One of them was the sale of GTA. I never would have, in a million years, thought that would ever fly. And somehow, by some miracle, it did go through. Then there's the reduction of the number of senators from 21 to 15. If anyone asked me, I'm not a betting person, but if I was, I would not have bet a nickel that would have gone through. And then there's of course, there's the recent, as you mentioned, the turnout of several senators due to voter disgust with the Juan Pat 10 smash and grab fiasco. And, I wouldn't have predicted that. And then there's also the one thing that was more of the result of a single citizen putting into action his or her disgust with the situation was a single citizen and voter taking GovGuam to court and forcing them to do the right thing and stop waiting for up to 4 years to issue tax refunds and instead do it within 6 months. It should be 3 months, I think. But, 6 months is quite an improvement, so, we'll take it. And you can probably mention, you're very aware of all the history that's passed. You can probably mention some things that, you thought would have gone through.
Carl, I remember when somebody took a director to court on a sunshine law violation, and it cost the director $1,000. We never thought we'd see that kind of enforcement of the sunshine law, but we did.
Yeah. So those kind of things, they're cause for a great deal of hope and optimism that, things can change once enough people have reached their enough is enough point and punch that button, the enough is enough button. And I hope, I really like that Ken has mentioned several times. I try to mention it. I hope you'll mention it once in a while. 41 states have part-time legislatures, and those are entire states. And, some have brought up that, Guam has, these other various things that are different. But Guam is actually the size of probably a decent-sized county in one of those states, or a modest-sized city, 160,000 people, and 210 square miles. You can lop about a third of that off because it's run by the federal government. So there's not actually a lot that is our legislators and the governor are responsible for. It's a pretty small area. So that excuse really goes up in smoke, I think.
Yeah, but those people in the states are not performing marriages and cranking out a dozen resolutions every week and holding state funerals and doing all these other important things that our senators do.
Yeah, which forces them to get down to business. When as you mentioned, Parkinson's law, when there's and people who want projects done, they know this, that the tendency of human nature is to, and I've done this many times, to wait until, the pressure mounts and you see that deadline looming and then all of a sudden just burst into action. So when there's a confined time limit to get things done, it forces people to drop off all the nonsense, all the hundreds of resolutions and all these other side things and get down to producing real results. Like with the hospital, I believe the hospital and the schools and the prison are in the condition they are because of all the time that's available to waste. And so, that I believe that it's a direct result of that. And if there's limited time and certain huge priorities looming, it's going to force people to just, drop the side issues, the minor stuff, and get on with the big issues.
The real issues.
Anyway, yeah. So anyway, thank you for allowing me to add my 2 bits.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Something I forgot that I was just reminded of when I was at the Rotary meeting. One of the things that the Rotarians do at the beginning of every meeting is they sing a song. And they have like a song leader, etc. So guess what the song was today?
Fernando?
No.
Okay.
Row, row, row your boat.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So no one was washing their hands when that was going on, but they did it anyhow. Okay, so thanks a lot for calling, Carl. And now I'm going to go to Jesse. Good afternoon, Jesse.
Good afternoon, Bob. I was just wondering about the what would be the intent of a part-time legislature in your view?
In my view, we'd get a different breed of cat serving in the legislature that would concentrate on legislation, not all of the extraneous stuff, and de-glamorize the whole process.
Okay, de-glamorize. Okay, what about, will there still be the two-party system?
Well, there wouldn't be anything to prevent the two-party system. That's a matter of individual preference, you know. But I would suspect the two-party system would survive, yeah.
Okay, and then what was the intent when they cut down the senators from 21 to 15? Was that the same intent that you were talking about?
I think the reason that was advanced was that it would be less expensive, and it was a lot less expensive. You know, there were times when we had 21 senators that the legislative budget was up to $21 million.
Okay, and then then we lowered the senatorial salaries as well, right? From 85 to 55.
Returned them back, yeah, they did.
Okay, and so for those, so maybe third time's a charm. Is that what you're trying to? You know, maybe you could look at it that way. That maybe if it's a part-time legislature, this third time's a charm.
Well, you mean the third reform in a row? Is that what you're saying, Jesse?
Yeah, like, you know, that's basically what I'm saying. Yeah, would this new reform again improve the lives, or, I mean, what, you know, what's your view on
yes,
you know, is it going to improve the quality of life on Guam? And then when we expect, are we supposed to expect our senators to improve the quality of our life on Guam, or the freedom of, because every law created is a new, you know, takes away less freedom, right? So
I've spoken to this before, Jesse, and here's the answer to your question. A Republican, a conservative, that's me, believe that the job of government is to secure and protect the rights of individuals and promote individual freedom. Democrats think that the government's job is to make people's lives better. And one of the things I highlighted at my speech was something that I say all the time on the show here, and that is what I want to see is this: an effective, efficient government that provides basic services in accordance with the rule of law on at least a break-even basis. Over time, that would improve the lives of the people because we wouldn't be wasting so much money on so much triviality, Jesse.
right, but you know, I guess where I have to disagree. I mean, not disagree, but I guess the difference, you know, in my view, with when it comes to wasting money, and obviously every cent is every cent that's wasted is a cent wasted, right? But you know, my take on this is, you know, Republicans and conservatives, they're also they like to protect businesses, and you know, and are usually, you know, want to improve the lives of the business community, people that own businesses, small business owners, you know, you name it, you know, and or corporations, whatever. But corporations are people, so, you know, my take is, I don't know how the Republicans can say that they don't, you know, they're not, how do you say this, doing what the Democrats are doing. But in any case, you know, education, our public health, and public safety, those really take up a big portion of our tax money, you know, or that demands a lot of taxes from everybody. And you know, I think when it comes to wasting money, I don't know who's done the analysis, or you know, who's analyzed that throughout the years, because, you know, for example, it costs $13,000 per child, you know, to send them to public school, and I don't know how many have dropped out, but I'm pretty sure that the number is pretty high, and I feel like, you know, we've lost so much money there. And then also the people that don't pay their bills at the hospital, and then also, you know, public safety, just, you know, all the compact impact and how that ties in. So I just think there's, you know, I don't know how this part-time legislature would figure all those things out. You know what I mean?
Well, it couldn't be any worse than what we've got right now, where, again, the legislature spends so much time on trivialities and inconsequential things, marriages, resolutions, etc.,
Right.
I think if we had people who were interested in public service and not public employment, who wanted to get in and spend 2 or 3 terms in the legislature to work on these problems, we'd be a lot better off, Jesse. Got to break.
Yeah, and just. Oh, okay. All right.
Got to break up. Thanks, Jesse.
Masatik ang nabangku sa mega sa issue Bank Pacific Di otro bangku ramas Ami hali Viva Bank Pacific
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in the Grand Plaza Hotel Tumon is now serving your favorite daily specials. Come one, come all. Enjoy your Monday with that savory cut and pica. Your Tuesday with your one and only candied salmon. Stroll by on Wednesday to try that local style oxtail kadu. Or Thursday if you're feeling that pan crisp pork belly served over roasted sweet potato mash. And don't forget that miso yaki black cod with garlic mashed potatoes on Friday. Busy at work and still want your fix? Call 969-2652 for your takeout order.
Talk Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
An interesting call from Jesse. Jesse, maybe I let you go too soon. If you still had more that you wanted to say on the issue, please call back and I'll put you back on the air. After I rang you off, I got the feeling that you had more to say, so I'd be glad to entertain you for a second ride on the Ferris wheel if you want to call back. Also, Vince Akimoto, I noticed that you were hanging on, and I know you don't have a lot of time to spend hanging on the phone, so you hung up. So I'll tell you what, if you call back at about the end of the halftime show, we'll start right off with you and give you as much time. I think I know what you're going to talk about. Give you as much time as you need. I don't want to see you spending a lot of time hanging on the phone either. So our Carl is back for a second ride on the Ferris wheel. Yes, sir, Carl.
Hey, Bob. Yeah, I was listening to Jesse's comments. I'd just like to read a quote from Milton Friedman. Friedman was, of course, the legendary conservative or libertarian economist. And this is really a nice quote. It said, Friedman said, "One of the reasons I'm in favor of less government is because when you have more government, big business takes it over, and the two together form a coalition against the ordinary worker and the ordinary consumer." And this is from Milton Friedman, who was pretty much some people claim he's libertarian, some people conservative, but he's on that side. So it's a very good quotation, and I think it says that no matter who is in power, no matter which party is in the majority, locally or nationally, that businesses tend to use financial means to curry favor, to use cronyism to advance their causes, to confiscate property, to prevent competition of competitors, to do these things. If they don't access that influence through government, they're at the mercy of consumers, and thousands of once large companies are just a ghost of what they used to be, or they're completely out of business because other companies came along and served the public better and either ran them out of business or downsized them. So
there's a key term here, Carl. It's called economic rent. It's one of those terms where you know the meaning of each of the words, but when you put the words together, they have a different meaning. So corporations are always, or not always, but frequently rent-seeking. They're looking for economic rent. And economic rent means a margin of profit not caused by an increase in production. as an example, it's not a very good example, but it's the first one that pops into my head. In some jurisdictions, in order to do manicures, you have to have a license. And the licenses are, you have to pay a fee, you jump through some hoops to get a license. This allows those who have the license to charge more for their service than they'd be able to charge if there were unlimited competition. So large corporations are very good at rent seeking out special contracts, special deals, special provisions, etc., that allow them to make more money, a larger profit than they would if they were only working with market forces. And that is a danger. And Uncle Milty's exactly right. And it's something that must be guarded against. Of course, the more giveaway programs the government has, the more bureaucracy it has, the greater the opportunity for rent seeking. And that's why I say I want to see a government that just provides basic government services. That's all. So that there isn't room for a lot of rent seeking and corporate corporate cronyism and these other things that we were just talking about. And I hope that gives Jesse a little bit of comfort here. I know Jesse is one who would say that, well, Republicans, that's big business, so they're going to set everything up so the big companies make profits and the little guy doesn't get anything. And you know how that one goes, Carl.
Yeah. Another really telling example of this, I've seen one or two videos where these billionaires have come out saying, they're usually on the left. Well, they're always on the left, saying that we should have higher taxes, which seems kind of very charitable of them. They're wealthy, they're billionaires, and they're saying they want higher taxes. But the secret behind this thing is it's really a phony gesture, because the tax code amounts to, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard it's over 91,000 pages. The vast majority of the tax code is exemptions. So it doesn't matter really what their rate is. What matters is what they pay after all the exemptions are factored in. And there's just thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of all kinds of business exemptions. They hire these people to go to Congress and to lobby and to get these exemptions put in the law. So these gestures, of we should have higher taxes. I'm a multi-billionaire, but I'm for higher taxes. It's really an empty gesture. It doesn't mean anything. The worst thing they would want is to have something like a flat tax, where if someone buys a pack of cigarettes, or a flat sales tax of some kind, where if someone buys a soda pop, they pay a fixed amount on that sale, and if someone buys a Maserati, they pay a fixed amount. That's the absolute worst thing they want. They want exemptions to, as much as possible, zero out their tax debt. So, and that is done by influencing legislators, Republican or Democrat. It doesn't matter who's in power or who has the majority. They will get lobbied and all kinds of goodies to do what's wanted. Anyway, Bob, thank you very much.
Okay, well, enjoy that big halftime show, Carl.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
California declares a state of emergency. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News, after the state recorded its first coronavirus death in an elderly patient who may have been infected aboard a cruise ship.
That individual went to a cruise, or went from San Francisco down to Mexico and back in February.
Governor Gavin Newsom on that vessel's current cruise, 11 passengers and 10 crew members are now showing signs they may be infected. The governor ordering the Grand Princess remain anchored offshore from San Francisco until tests are completed. 3 more states reporting cases of the virus, including Texas, New Jersey, and...
In New York, nearly a dozen people have been diagnosed with COVID-19, including an attorney in his 50s who's been hospitalized in severe condition. A friend who drove him to the hospital has now also tested positive, along with the man's wife and 3 kids.
But Fox's Rick Leventhal reports New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo says the anxiety in his state is outpacing the reality of the situation. There are more than 1,000 people in the state in either mandated or self-imposed isolation over the virus. Missouri's Republican Senator Josh Hawley says he'll introduce a resolution to censure Senate Democrat leader Chuck Schumer for comments he made during a pro-choice rally outside the Supreme Court Wednesday, when he warned Justices Kavanaugh and Gorsuch they will pay the price if they go forward with awful decisions. President Trump reacting on Hannity.
It was a terrible thing he said. I was amazed by it, and if that were a Republican, you would see really bad things happening. It's very unequal justice, and it's a disgrace that he was able to say something like that.
Louisiana Senator John Kennedy is calling on Schumer to apologize. Big day on Wall Street Wednesday. The Dow gaining 1,173 points, NASDAQ up 334, the S&P 500 126 points higher. America is listening to Fox News.
Howdy, this is Jesse Cruz from Security Title. And in celebration of Tomorrow Month, here's a tip on dealing with your land. You might be thinking of putting your child on the title to your property, but keep in mind, if your child is a minor under the age of 18, you will need a court order allowing you to mortgage or sell your property. Protege itanomo. Protect your land. When it comes to your family land, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Yikes, are those Christmas bills coming in already? Those high-interest credit cards at 16, 18, even 24%? Well, we have a New Year's solution for you. A Bank Pacific personal loan with rates as low as 4.65% to pay off those expensive credit cards. It's easy, it's fast, and it's as low as 4.65% APR.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal credit opportunity lender as low as 4.65%. Conditions apply.
Senator Bernie Sanders, hoping for a big night on Super Tuesday, fell short, winning only 4 primaries, but he told supporters on Wednesday he is undaunted.
What I hope very much is that what we can focus on is an issue-oriented campaign which deals with the concerns of the American people.
Sanders calling it a 2-man race now, referring to he and Joe Biden, who had better than expected results on Super Tuesday. Mike Bloomberg ended his brief presidential bid on Wednesday.
I entered the race for president to defeat Donald Trump. And today, I am leaving the race for the same reason, to defeat Donald Trump, because staying in would make it more difficult to achieve that goal.
Thursday night, President Trump will hold a town hall meeting in Scranton, Pennsylvania, ironically the birthplace of former Vice President Joe Biden. That town hall to be broadcast on the Fox News Channel. Defense Secretary Mark Esper telling lawmakers on Wednesday the Taliban is honoring its recently signed agreement as they're not attacking U.S. forces, but they're not abiding by the plan to reduce violence in Afghanistan either, triggering new airstrikes.
U.S. response took place in volatile Helmand province Wednesday after 43 Taliban attacks against Afghan forces took place the day before, according to Pentagon officials. Colonel Sonny Leggett, a spokesman for U.S. Forces Afghanistan, said in a tweet, "We call on the Taliban to stop needless attacks and uphold their commitment." The strikes came a day after President Trump told reporters that he had a good conversation with the leader of the Taliban.
I said right from the beginning, not easy to get out of these conflicts, very complex.
The Taliban has declined to confirm or deny responsibility for any of the attacks, but a Taliban spokesman said in a tweet that according to the plan, the Taliban is implementing all parts of the agreement.
Fox's Kevin Cork. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon is stirring up some of your favorite drinks all night long. Come down on Wednesday and Friday nights from 5:30 to 10 p.m. Indulge in some of your favorite local cuisine and pair it with your favorite drink. From our ice-cold beers, our finest selection of wines and liquors, to our top-notch cocktail specials, your friends at Mezcla Bistro Tumon are ready to serve you. Why limit happy to only an hour? The Mezcla family reminds everyone to drink responsibly. See you on Wednesday and Friday night.
Cocoa Coffee Company is now available at Circle K. Single origin coffee beans, carefully sourced and locally roasted to give you the freshest cup of coffee Guam has to offer. Grab a cup that's brewed every 30 minutes or purchase a bag of the locally roasted whole beans. Flavors now serving: light medium roasted Ethiopia and medium dark roasted Jamaican Blue Mountain. Exclusively available at Circle K. With every Cocoa Coffee Company purchase, a portion of the proceeds will go towards the Cocoa Recovery Program.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So, the big halftime show that we've all come to know and love so well, it just doesn't get any better than that. I especially like that barrage of cannon fire at the end of the show. It gets me all fired up so that I can come back with lots of pep for the second half of Tall Tales, which is exactly where we are right now, the second half of Tall Tales. Well, I think I spent enough time talking about I spent more time talking about my speech at the Rotary Club today on the program than I did actually giving the speech at the Rotary Club. So we go from there to the card. Next item on the card is coronavirus versus FESPAC. And this is a really short item contributed by the poet laureate of Tall Tales, Andrew. And this is what Andrew says. So now there'll be no luau dining. The bewildered artists are whining. No travel desirous. Because of the virus, this cloud has a true silver lining. Here, here, Andrew. And from that, I go back to the Burn. The Burn had a kind of a rough day on Tuesday, didn't he? Byrne thought he was going to clean up, but the candidate who'd been biding his time kind of cleaned up on Super Tuesday. Byrne is still in the race and still flapping his wings and talking like a socialist. Only reason he talks like a socialist is because he's a socialist. So you may recall that I had this piece here from the WAPO, Washington Post, 14 questions for the Burn by a guy named Charles Lane who writes for WAPO. Here, and number 9, which I did yesterday, I thought was pretty good. I'm going to repeat number 9, then I'll go to number 10. Number 9, should physician-assisted suicide, now legal in 9 states and the district, be covered by Medicare for all? Assisted suicide, of course, the assistance comes from a doctor, from an MD, and we've expanded the definition of health care to include even taking the life of an unborn child while it's in its mother's womb. So why not suicide? How about it, Byrne? I'd really like to see somebody bounce that one off the burn. And we have number 10. You have supported the right of healthcare providers such as, wait a minute, I did this one yesterday and I forgot to mark it off. Number 11. You have candidly expressed the view that Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, is a racist. Would you name any other foreign leaders who are also racists? Or is Netanyahu the only one? Now, of course, if you're a Democrat, you have to hate Israel. And the reason you have to hate Israel is because you got to be pro-Muslim. And why are Democrats so in love with Islam? The reason is because people who are, as you were Muslims, are not Catholics. And the Democrats are dead set against Catholics and Christians. So it's kind of complicated, but I would be interested to see how the burn would answer that question. Okay. Something kind of intriguing here that I'm going to take a minute to read. Senator Therese Talahi in 2018 had the most votes, 22,450. That's less than 15% of our population. Senator Pito Talahi had 11,840. That's only 7% of our population. Very disturbing numbers, and I think these numbers will be worse when we get a part-time legislature. Okay, you're not Bernie Sanders, Jesse, but I have a question. Why would the numbers be worse? My sense is that if we had a part-time legislature, more people would turn out for the election than turn out for what we have now, because what I just read about learned helplessness, people figure it doesn't matter. We're only going to get stuck with the same old stuff anyhow. No one ever comes along that's any different, a different approach, new ideas. It's always the same old thing. I'm staying home. But if you have a different explanation, Jesse, call me up and tell me what it is. Okay, next item on the card is Talina versus Lou. And this is Talina's bill. This is a story that ran in the Post. In reaction to last year's riots at local schools, Vice Speaker Nelson has introduced a bill that would hold parents accountable if their children's actions harm people or property. The bill goes one step further and includes those who incite or encourage violent or harmful actions. Bill 310, the Parent Accountability Act of 2020, comes after repeated calls from education officials and school communities for tougher penalties on parents whose children pose a threat to the safety and welfare of other students, according to a press release from the Vice Speaker. Last year, a fight at John F. Kennedy High School escalated into a riot. There was a threat of a weapon at Southern and George Washington high schools. There also was a fight that turned into a riot at Tejon High School, another fight at Okido, and a potential weapon was confiscated at Jose Rios Middle School. In some of the incidents, some students were sent to the hospital. Other students were expelled or suspended, and in all cases, instructional time was lost as school officials had to institute procedures to ensure campus safety. Nelson met with school and education officials following the riots. According to her release, school administrators support the idea of holding parents and guardians more accountable for their children's actions. On Friday, a trio of boys, and you know all about that, so I don't need to go through that again. Here's what Nelson proposes: holding parents and guardians liable for the cost of damages to property, persons, etc., charitable organizations, Bystanders who initiate, instigate, or incite malicious acts may be duly charged with guilt established by complicity. They will also be fined $1,000 per offense. Empower minor victims of harmful actions by allowing victims of malicious acts or their parents to initiate civil action for the purpose of receiving compensation of at least $1,000 per offense. Contact or retaliation by the aggressor or bystanders would be recognized as an additional offense, etc. The article goes on to say, for parents, it is given they do their absolute best to raise their children to not only be good citizens, but also virtuous individuals. That's a given? I disagree here. Nelson says it's a given that they do their best. Now, of course, the word they is always a problem because no one ever knows what it means anymore. So I'll read the sentence without using the word they. For parents, it is given that parents do the parents' absolute best to raise the parents' children to not only be good citizens, but virtuous individuals. I don't know that that's true. I don't know that it's even close to being true. I think a lot of parents toss the kid an iPhone or an iPad or something like that and engage at what could be best described or partially described as benign neglect at best, without taking any steps to teach the kids about being virtuous or honorable or anything like that, any of these old square ideas that only old people pay any attention to. Okay, so I got Jesse back on the line here, so I'm going to stop, take a deep breath, and then I'm going to see what Jesse wants to bring back or bring up. What is it, Jesse?
Yeah, I'm just touching up on the on why the voter turnout would probably be lower. I just feel it would be because it already obviously shows that people aren't interested. So if it's a part-time, I doubt they'd be interested. And that's why I asked you if there's going to be an elimination of the two parties, because what we saw in 2018 was the Democrats banding together and making Tina Munoz Barnes a speaker versus Therese Talahi, who had the most votes. So you could already see that the party is already dictating, despite Talahi having the most votes, and then you have the guy who had the lowest votes, in charge of a very powerful, or not powerful, but a very important committee in government, which is the public safety. So, and then we just, there's already 50,000 people, nearly 50,000 people on government welfare here on Guam.
Can I stop you there for a second, Jesse? I want to go through some of the points that you make, okay? There is a myth that when a party gains a majority of the seats in the legislature, the member of that party that got the most votes becomes a speaker. I think that may have happened once or twice, but it's certainly not the rule, and it's not the It's not the expectation. When the Democrats were going into that election, you remember Therese Talahi had been the vice speaker in the legislature before, so that when BJ resigned to become public auditor, Therese became the acting speaker. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people were mumbling, well, I guess Therese will be our next speaker. And right here at Tall Tales, I said, I don't think so. Because when it comes to the various positions within the legislature and the various committees, it's always a contest of what we would call horse trading. So the majority, everyone in the majority has the chair of a committee. Nobody in the minority does. So when it comes time to decide who gets which committee, there's a lot of log rolling and horse trading, and people kind of set up their own little coteries. I'll back you for speaker, but you got to give me such and such committee, that kind of thing.
That's what it gets super political. Yeah, you know.
Well, it's political. People use the word political in a very broad sense. To me, political means parties, partisan politics, Democrat and Democratic and Republican. But when it comes to these kinds of maneuvers, it's human nature that people will attempt to build alliances.
Exactly right.
Attempt to build alliances to achieve the ends that they think are important. I remember when Robert Underwood was first elected to Congress, he came back to give the speech at the next graduation, and Robert said this. Robert said, I was asked why I wanted to give up my position at the university, which was a really good job, which I really liked, which I was good at, and enter the hurly-burly of politics in Washington. And he said, I always told them I did that to escape university politics. So, you know, even if it's the chairman of the Social Studies Committee at GW, you're going to find this kind of horse trading and log rolling. So the fact that that Tina Rose Munya Barnes got the speakership instead of Therese Terlahi is a product of the process that I just described, with the potential that the governor may have gotten involved somewhere along the line. But that's the way democracies work, Jesse.
You know, I know, but I'm just saying in the sense that you know, she probably got votes too because of the fact that she became the speaker. You know, you're always out there, your name's there, but my whole point is that even voter registration is so low on Guam. I mean, 55,000, that's not even half. So, I mean, we're still, you know, even if people did have even if we did go part-time and more people came out, there's still a vast majority of the population not voting, you know, and also there's nearly 50,000 people on welfare on Guam, and those people are probably just, hey, you know, my life is all good. Everything's like, where are those people at the voting booth? You know.
Let me address the first part, okay, Jesse. The old saying is that those people who don't go to the polls have cast their lot with a majority. That's the way it works. Now, second thing is this: the fewer people that go to the polls and vote, the more your vote and the more my vote counts. So in that respect, you know, I would see the ideal scenario is if we have an election and only you and I vote, because my vote has half the clout.
Right. Yeah. Well, you know, it's just crazy because you know, 10%, you know, less than 20% of the people are basically leaving our island in the hands of you know, of these people that are making laws and governing the land, and that's just really disturbing that it's that way. You know what I mean?
Well,
I mean, it might as well just be me and you that just vote and say, okay, you know, and then, you know.
My fix, Jesse, is to have a legislature that has more in common with the folks in the villages than the legislatures we have right now. A legislature of the people instead of a legislature of the professional politicians.
And then I got so confused with this last election because here you had the Republican governor wanting to raise the GRT to 5, and then when the Democrats came in, you know, BJ Cruz did a thing about the minimum wage, passed some kind of law or something, and then they said they'll hold back. Governor Calvo said, okay, we'll hold back, and I think by the time he got to it already, he had, you know, we got a new governor, and then it took the Democrats nearly 2 years to follow up on BJ Cruz's law. So I'm just like, what the heck's going on? And sometimes these Democrats act like Republicans, and so I don't know. That's what I'm saying, man. I mean, I think people just really we all need to get more involved with how things work, and I just can't believe that you know.
Here's a solution. Here's a solution, Jesse. We ought to make it much more easy for the average person on Guam to listen to tall tales.
Yeah, that's but yeah, you guys are all over the place, so I don't see why it's but then again, with 50,000 people on welfare, I don't know if they can listen on maybe they don't have money to afford internet or high speed internet or something, but that's why I really hope that I was always hoping that the government could do something to put some Wi-Fi or I don't know, but
See,
so more people can get informed. But
what we're looking for is an informed citizenry. It's not only a right; it's a duty. And the best way to have an informed citizenry is to have everybody listening to Tall Tales, right, Jesse?
Yeah, that could be that's or you could just run for office and then then have someone run Tall Tales and still
I don't know.
But I don't know.
A lot of people can run. A lot of people can run for senator. A lot of people can be senator. But when it comes to Tall Tales,
yeah,
I don't know.
It's better. Oh, and then I was gonna call some other time and ask about what do you say that church separation of church and state? But I'll save that for some other day or something.
It's a subject I really like, Jesse. So give me a buzz on that. Thanks for
okay. Thanks. Okay.
Thanks for calling back. And let's see, I've got another Bob on the line. Wow. Okay, another Bob. Good afternoon.
Real Bob. This is another Bob. So I listened to the comment that you made that the legislature should be of the people, for the people. And so when I got on island just a short while ago, one of the things that I thought was interesting is that the island wasn't divided into either districts or the legislature. Our representatives weren't from a specific village. Why is that?
Well, a couple of reasons. One, the Organic Act says that we can have 21 senators and we can have districts provided that, they're equally proportioned. So we tried it in the 15th and 16th legislatures. They fell. The scheme fell because it was not one man, one vote. At that time, we didn't have census figures sharp enough to do a really good job of districting. So what we really had was smaller at-large districts. The only single-member district was in the South. And we had 3 other districts that had multi-members. The census figures now are sharp enough to do it, but I don't think that you could expect the incumbents to take a crack at that because they probably would be unseating themselves. If you had 15 senators and 15 districts and you spread those senators around the island, that isn't the way where most of the senators live. Most of the senators live in Tamuning, Agania Heights, etc.
Right.
So it sounds like a good idea. That same question came up today at the Rotary, and I had to indicate that I'm not in favor of districting for several reasons. One, when you have districting, you have to cut across village boundaries and other traditional boundaries. So you could have a district that had some of Dadido and some of Jigo. Not the best possible situation.
Sure.
I don't know that the talent is equally distributed around the island. Our island is not homogeneous. We have a hard time coming up with 15 good senators. I don't know if it would be I don't know if it'd be any easier if we separated into districts. And then finally, the really important reason is that had we had districting in the 27th and 28th Guam legislature, I wouldn't have been elected. So that's about as conclusive an argument as I think I could make. I'm sure you agree with me and other Bob. Us Bobs have to stick together, right?
Yeah. It doesn't seem fair, and granted, I live in Assen, but the folks that live down south with no representation in the legislature, and whenever a bill is given for public debate, the audience is very small, and so getting representation just from the public, it seems like it's lopsided, and we only have and I don't want to call all of them activists, but for lack of a better term, only the activists are the ones that show up at the public hearings for these bills that are proposed. And so we don't get a fair representation of the people. But if we had districts or senators from each of the villages, then at least if you got we'll just use Mauricio, Tolofofo, Inaraha, the southern villages, at least if, they didn't have a consensus when it came to voting, said they disagreed with the law as proposed, then it doesn't get passed. So, okay, but I get it.
You wouldn't be able to have one senator for every village. When we had districting, I think it was like, from Jonia to, from Jonia to Agate, Santa Rita, and south. That was one big district, and it had one senator because there aren't very many people down there.
True.
So and the nice thing about single member districts is this: you can vote against somebody. If there's somebody you really don't like, even if he's not in your district, you could go out and campaign against him. When you've got 15 people running at large, you can't vote against somebody.
Yeah.
Okay, nice talking to you, another Bob.
All right, real Bob.
I've got another Joe on the line, and I have Dr. Vince on the line. So I'm going to, right after the seventh inning stretch, I'm going to go to Dr. Vince and then to you, another Joe.
If you own a Toyota, please listen to this. It could help you avoid injury, maybe save your life. The Takata airbags installed in certain Toyotas can explode and shoot out sharp metal fragments at people inside the vehicle. You don't need to be in a collision. They could explode any time. In the U.S., these airbags have caused 26 deaths. There's been a worldwide recall of Takata airbags, and most have had the faulty parts replaced. But here in Guam, there are still over 3,000 Toyotas on the road with potentially lethal airbags, and yours could be one of them. So please, take your Toyota to Atkins Grow, even if you didn't buy it from us, and get the inflator replaced. It costs you nothing, it takes just about an hour, and it could save a life, yours or someone you love. The AK song says we're here for life. That's never been more true.
At Atkins Grow, we're here for life.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla. Mezcla has all your favorites this Lent season. Try their fish tacos, crispy fish burger, spicy garlic butter shrimp, or lobster pasta at a great price. Available daily for lunch and dinner. Visit Mezcla in Agotnya and now in Tumon at the Grand Plaza Hotel. For reservations, please call 969-2652.
Center field bleachers, Wrigley Field, Chicago, Illinois, and I see the Cubs doctor sitting up here in the grandstand, so I'm going to go straight to Dr. Vince. Good afternoon, Vince.
Good afternoon, Dr. Klitzkie. Actually, I'm a Red Sox fan, but thanks for trying.
I think you could let a Red Sox fan would be let into the bleachers at Wrigley Field, but it would be a matter of sufferance, not a matter of right.
I don't know what you're talking about, but that's why you're the lawyer, and I'm just a doctor, a medical doctor there, Jim. Sorry to butt into Real Joe. We'll get out of the way soon, but there is a bit of breaking news that hopefully you already know about, but the state of Hawaii has declared itself to be in a state of emergency because of the coronavirus, and apparently some other states in the union are doing the same. It looks like there's been really no change in their medical status. No one has died of coronavirus in Hawaii that we know of, but apparently they're doing a preemptive political strike to try to get at some of that federal money that the president is about to unleash to try to defend the nation. There has been a notice of person of under suspicion in both CNMI as well as Majuro, and so that adds to the person under suspicion in Palau. And so things are happening around Guam, but Guam still remains coronavirus-free according to the government of Guam, and the governor of Guam is slated to speak shortly to the assembled healthcare community at the Dusit Thani Conference Center at 6:30 this evening, and so preparations have already been completed, and she will be there shortly. I think there's going to be several live broadcasts of her speech tonight on different news media. But the big issue that, unfortunately, that I need to present to your listeners and the people of Guam today is that as we're going into this very, I think, critical time where there could be a lot of big decisions made and really some really important medical work that needs to be done, we're getting really heartbreaking complaints from people in the front lines, the first responders, the medics, the firefighters, and the police officers, that yet again the promise that they would be outfitted with personal protective equipment to allow them to do their job during this pandemic is not there. I mean, they may have some nominal supplies, but they can count and they can determine just how many runs are going to be possible given the current inventory, and it is ridiculous. The situation in the field is unacceptable, and in most cases, really, these people should not respond. If we're saying that coronavirus is on Guam, if we're saying that people out there are sick and we're expecting our medics to transport or our police officers to help, it is not fair to their families or to the people in the villages in which they live for these people to be allowed to go and do this. They cannot do their job because somebody in procurement decided that they were not going to let that requisition fly. So I'm on a rampage to get requisition officers and supply officers to come in tonight and fill up the places that we need these PPEs right now. It's idiotic if you're going to send police officers and firefighters and any number of first responders into the field to fight this fight without their equipment to protect them. Otherwise, we're going to lose them. Right now, in Kirkland, Washington, 27 firefighters and police officers are in 21-day quarantine. It won't take long for our entire first responder force to be depleted because some idiot in procurement couldn't add. And so if anybody thinks that we're kidding, just look at Simon Sanchez High School. That's an example of how good Guam is at procurement and fixing things. So tonight, don't go to bed feeling any good. Don't feel safe. There's nothing good happening tonight if our police officers and our medics don't have the equipment they were promised since the SARS epidemic back in 2003. I'm sorry to get so passionate about it, but if we're going to be rabid about Red Sox baseball, we'll be rabid about protecting our first responders. Because today, I think we all should act like coronavirus is here, because it probably is.
Very good, Vince. I'm really glad you called and shared that with us. We will be keeping an eye here on Tall Tales on the provision of necessary emergency equipment to first responders. That's a serious issue, and it's the kind of thing that is right up Tall Tales' alley.
Yes, sir, and I hope our friend over at the BBMR can find a way to let loose some funding to make sure that we get this done. I mean, again, everybody's watching the coffers, and I guess they're all planning to give themselves a big fat raise pretty soon. We need to buy some gloves, masks, and gowns so that people can go save lives. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Vince. Thanks for calling. So that's Dr. Vince Akimoto, who is a research fellow in the Tall Tales think tank medical bureau, giving us an update on where we are with coronavirus. And I want to thank him very much for that. Okay, back to the phones here, and I see a new family. The nueva familia, eh? The familia another.
Yes, sir.
Another Bob, another Joe.
Yeah, familia another.
Yeah. Okay, another Joe. What can you tell me?
Hey, Dan, Bob. It's like your kids, eventually, they're going to have a different family name, too. if someone has something special. So anyway, I just wanted to add and weigh in that the most recent attention paid to the homeless was, I think it was Bill 18-35, or not sure if it was the reverse of that. 35th legislature, the 18th bill, and that bill didn't even get to go to public hearing. It died in Senator San Augustine's committee. So, if God forbid we start having epidemics with the homeless, I just want everyone to remember that bill was put forward by Senator Moylan, and it died in Senator San Augustine's committee because he did not want to let it go to public hearing.
Well,
so having said that,
he probably had a really good reason he didn't want it to go to public hearing. Who did you say the author was?
Senator Moylan.
There you go.
Yeah. So, God forbid, I hope that our homeless, a lot of them are impaired both physically and mentally, and they need real help. I feel for them. There's some who maybe should have paid more attention or tried more to help themselves more. But having said that, there are a heck of a lot of them who just had the deck stacked against them from the start with impairments physically and mentally. Now, Uncle Bob, I'm sorry to say this, but we're trying to be real and honest with each other. Now, it's been said that the basis of a really, I would say, good or long-lasting relationship is, a little bit of dishonesty. That's what comedians like to say. In other words, don't tell your wife she's fat and she doesn't fit in the dress. That sort of thing. Always tell her she's beautiful and pretty and it's perfect. Always.
I have no trouble with that because my wife is beautiful and perfect. I hope she's listening this afternoon.
She's never gained a pound in her life. She's always been perfect, exactly like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, having said that, Uncle Bob, I've been keeping up with contemporary, the young generation. And there's just like two channels, I think, Fusion and Vice. And they do background stories of people in different communities. And it came to my attention that in the oil industry, some of these young guys, right out of high school, if they even graduated, were making like $200,000 to $250,000 per annum. That's $250,000. So you do the math. If they're able to save up at least half of that, they're on their way after several years to being a millionaire. The reason I bring that up, Uncle Bob, is because out here in the middle of the Pacific, we ain't got that many options. There aren't like oil fields we can go work in, get, $250,000 per annum. And here in Guam, we have very limited land. So I'm emphasizing that because you got, right now you got a population of 160,000, and you got an interest. You have people who are interested in a Chamorro homeland, but it makes other people nervous when you say Chamorro homeland and what it means to everyone else who isn't deemed Chamorro or Chamorro enough. And so those are real issues. But having said that, look at the state of the island. I mean, we haven't really been paying attention. I don't know if we could have done anything about the rhino beetle. I'm not sure if we could have, done anything about all these broken down buildings, all these, all this infrastructure that hasn't been paid attention to in the past 10, 20 years. Everything you can think of, fill in the blank, that we should have been doing, but we haven't been doing. And we can't criticize our elders because, it's our generation. Can't blame you, Uncle Bob. Is younger people. At some point, we got to figure out what can we do for this island, and can it be how can it be accomplished? And I have to say, it makes me nervous when you got people live stateside, whether it be in the U.S. or Canada, make $250,000 per annum, and they have access to all these resources. And you talk about populations, stateside's 300 million people plus, right? I just feel like so we cannot compete. If you're looking at democracy and the free market, our small island community cannot compete with stateside and Canadian resources, the ability to make a lot of money, and then to show up on our shores. I just feel as though it's just a matter of time before we become like the state of Hawaii, where it just feels as though like the majority of the Native Hawaiians on Oahu, at least, I'm not sure with the other islands, they feel disenfranchised. And I don't know how your children feel about it, but I feel as though a lot of my relatives that I know, we're really I think we feel kind of nervous about it, and so that's probably why there's just it feels like there's a stronger pull to some sort of a Chamorro homeland. Me preferably, personally, I like to see it under the U.S. umbrella. That's why I keep looking towards Native American reservations and to some capacity, because I think you could possibly have a Chamorro nation in the nation of USA on a reservation in some capacity is better than nothing. And when you look at the state of Hawaii, I don't know that they're going to get any better as far as the outlook for their native population. And I feel like we're like I don't know, 10, more than 10 years behind them, that aspect. And
I got to introduce a little reality into the conversation here. If you look at the Hawaii legislature, how many members of the Hawaii legislature are, quote, Native Hawaiians?
Well, no, I would say probably very few, right?
Yeah, if you look at the legislature of Guam, how many of the legislature of Guam are, quote, Native Guamanians, Native Chamorros? Year in, year out.
Majority, maybe.
Yeah, year in, year out, it's almost all. Does that count? Does that count for? Does that count for anything? Does that count for anything?
I'm sorry?
Does that count for anything?
It does, Uncle Bob. It does. I'm just saying. I'm trying to be honest. It's just something. If there's a reason why we're feeling nervous, I think it's in that context that.
Well, if you want to feel nervous about something, think in terms of setting aside part of the island as a reservation.
Okay.
For Chamorros, and herding all the Chamorros into that reservation.
See, this is the thing. Why would we have to force them to occupy it? It's just a matter of here's a place if you want to go and participate in native Chamorro language speaking.
Okay, Jangan Jamu Ifino Chamorro.
I don't speak very well.
Yeah, ti necessite alternate lugat na wini na Jangan Jamu Ifino Chamorro. You don't need a special place for it. Guam is the Guam is the epicenter of Chamorro culture. If you want to see how the Chamorro culture is practiced, you're there, right here. And if you want to,
I'll just leave it there. I'm just saying. I'm trying to be real and honest. I think a lot of Chamorros, people who identify with being Chamorro in some capacity, they might feel this way. And if they saw what I've observed as to how people stateside and in North America and in Canada, how they can make so much more money because they have access to so many more resources. Like I said,
is that because they have their own reservations?
No, I mean they have a wealth of North America. It's a wealth of resources. We only have these little islands in this archipelago. But anyway, having said that, I appreciate your time, Uncle Bob, and I'll just keep listening.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Jesse, Guam is a small island with not a very large number of people, and that has an awful lot to do with what the opportunities are or are not. But I just don't understand this idea of a Chamorro homeland. This is a Chamorro homeland. Okay, well, we're coming down to the home stretch. We'll go through the home stretch, and then I've got a caller on the line named, what is his name, real Joe Cruz?
Jimmy.
It can't be Jimmy.
Jimmy.
It can't be Jimmy.
It is.
Yeah,
Jimmy.
it's 17, almost 1750, and he's just calling now. This can't be Jimmy.
It's probably an update on his campaign.
Probably.
At the mall, as you enjoy your shopping, dining, or entertainment, you could also win 3 great cars from Atkins Kroll and thousands of prizes in Micronesia Mall's Cars, Prizes, and Getaways game. Present your mall receipts and have a chance to win the renowned performance Chevrolet Camaro, the unapologetic rugged Toyota 4Runner, or the head-turning Lexus ES350 Luxury. Getaways to Manila, courtesy of Philippine Airlines, plus prizes from Foot Locker and Burger King. The more you shop, the more chance to win in Micronesia Mall's Cars, Prizes, and Getaways game.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training every morning on The Ray Gibson Show.
Can we improve our workplace skills by bathing in the wisdom of athletes? I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, some notable things some of the best have said.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Okay, so here we are. Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, the home stretch. That means I've got about 8 more minutes to wrap up another exciting, informational, elucidating, help me out here, give me one more
Educational.
word. Educational. Thank you, Real Joe Cruz. Episode of Tall Tales, and how better to wind up the program with the legendary Jimmy.
Exhilarating.
And it's only one Jimmy on the line today. Sometimes
you want more?
Sometimes we have 3 or 4 Jimmys on the line at one time.
Well, like Walt Whitman said, do I contradict myself? I contain millions.
We got 3 Jimmys on the line today. Turn your radio off, Jimmy.
I just turned it down.
All right.
But did you hear? Anyway, Bob, it's just terrific to talk to you on this Guamanian Thursday afternoon. But did you hear about the latest Guam bargains?
The latest GovGuam burgers?
Bargains.
Bargains. No, I haven't heard about the latest GovGuam bargains, Jimmy.
Well, they following the expensive hotels. Okay, in GovGuam, you buy 2 senators and you get 1 for free.
Buy 2 senators and you get 1 for free. All right.
Yeah, and if you buy 3 senators, you get 2 mayors for free.
Okay, and no shipping costs either, right?
Well, we hadn't figured that out yet.
Okay.
But now I got to go and make some sausage. I'm trying to find out who is the best candidate for the vice mayor of Jonia. Now, I've considered Ray Gibson. Now, he would be very good in, what do they call it when you're talking in front of the mayor's council? It's not gerrymander, it's kind of like that.
What'd you say, Jimmy?
Yeah, tonight my mind's on sausage making.
Okay.
Trying to find out who's going to be the vice mayor of Jonia.
Yeah, the vice mayor.
Yeah, the vice mayor. Somebody's got to take care of all the vice in Jonia. And we got a short list. And Ray Gibson is not on it. He's not that familiar with the vice, but he would be good in what's that word? Starts with J. In front of the mayor's council.
Uh-huh.
And anyway, I'm pushing for quick draw Tenorio. He fit right in with the mayor's council because he's the one that gave them big salary rise, and he's obviously familiar with the vice. Maybe he's not familiar with the vice in Jonia, but he's just familiar with vice generally.
Yeah. Okay, Jimmy. So much for Jonia, and I'll pass the word on to Ray that he doesn't cut the mustard as far as being the vice mayor of Jonia.
No, he just don't have enough vice experience.
Okay. Well, thanks for passing that along, Jimmy. That's a real treasure. So thanks for calling. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so we're right down close to the end of the rainbow here. I'm going to take a peek at Facebook. I've got Pam Duvall, and this is what Pam Duvall says. I'm surprised Kelly Titano hasn't come up with a bill to rid rhino beetles attacking and destroying our cultural coconuts. There's oil in them coconuts. And Pam Duvall is a real student of the program. She spells this way, Keeix. So thank you, Pam, for helping me out with that one. Let's see what I got here. Go up a little ways. Going back to Jesse. Jesse says, and I think the Supreme Court deemed that corporations are people. Well, actually, corporations have been, quote, people since we invented corporations in American law. As far as the law is concerned, a corporation is a juridical person. It sues and can be sued and has some of the same attributes as a natural person. What the Supreme Court did was it said that those persons in the form of corporations had free speech protection under the First Amendment. And if they so desired, they could contribute to the political process, which doesn't seem to me to be all that outrageous. And everybody, at the time, people thought, oh man, the corporations are really going to take over everything. But that same rule applied to labor unions. And labor unions have jumped into it with both feet also, Jesse. So let's see, I've got, Jesse says both parties represent the people and both parties have shown to side with lobbyists, the wealthy, and corporations. Well, that's what lobbyists do. But you also have, Jesse says both parties have sided with lobbyists. Now, the only place that lobbyists count is in the government, not as far as parties are concerned. But you have a lot of people who are not corporations trying to influence the government in which direction it goes. This whole separatist movement here is not a corporation, but it obviously has a tremendous influence on our legislature and the whole separatist movement. The 11,000 employees of the government of Guam, not a lobbyist, they're not lobbyists, but they do have a certain amount of clout with the government of Guam. So a couple more comments that I wanted to pick up on, but I won't be able to since we've come to the Real Joe Cruz's favorite part of the program, which is the end. So the Real Joe Cruz and I will be back tomorrow for our least favorite day of the week. We hate Fridays because we got to go 2 days without tall tales. See you then.